Leprechaun 4, Leprechaun in Space.
No. 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 God damn it. Why does every franchise eventually end up in space? Well, at least I always have Usagi Yojimbo. I can always trust you to stay within your shot. Oh, come on! So, it's finally time to talk about Space Usagi. It's a common joke in fandom that whenever a franchise runs out of ideas, it eventually ends up in space or in the future or with some other kind of sci-fi gimmick added to it. It especially seems to happen a lot with franchises that have many sequels, and Thing But in Space has sort of become its own little parody trope. Now, despite my little gag there in the beginning, I don't particularly mind, even though I'm not the biggest space sci-fi nut myself. I don't really believe in the notion of any tropes being inherently bad, and there are plenty examples of space-themed seasons or sequels of stuff being perfectly fine, or if nothing else, entertaining. But with that said, it certainly is a strange thing to see Usagi Yojimbo, a franchise that prides itself and has won countless awards on being a remarkable historically accurate depiction of feudal Japanese society and social norms, suddenly take to outer space of all things. But that's exactly what happened in 1992 when a 3-issue Space Usagi miniseries titled Death and Honor showed up on comic book shelves, a mere 8 years into the franchise's lifespan. It was then followed by 2 other 3-issue series, namely White Star Rising in 1994 and Warrior in 1996. A trilogy of interconnected stories set in outer space that are released with 2 years between each other? I somehow feel like I've seen that before. Again, despite my jokes at the beginning, the series didn't exactly start out of a lack of ideas though. If anything, it started out of too many. To hear Stan tell it in later interviews, Space Usagi was developed largely because he wanted to draw Usagi interacting with dinosaurs, and he simply found the idea of doing so via sci-fi way more interesting than finding some excuse to send his character back in time. At about the same time, after the success of the Usagi action figures sold as part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line, Mattel asked Stan for more characters, prompting him to give them Space Usagi. Because heaven forbid we ever get a toy of someone like Tomoe or Jay. And as it happened, not only was the show Bucky O'Hare, which also starred a spacefaring rabbit on its way, but Stan's friends at Mirage Comics were looking to expand their comic book lineup, leading to the release of the action figure and the first Space Usagi miniseries. Now, like I said, space adventure is not really my main genre. I mean, I enjoy it fine, but it's not really my main thing. But with only 9 issues, a couple short stories, and a very short animated pilot, I thought it would be fun to go through all of Space Usagi's collected adventures, which can be found in the trade paperback Usagi Yojimbo Legends. Now, given the series' short length and it being a more self-contained story, this video is going to be more of a recap and pretty spoiler heavy as we go through the series one by one. So, you've been warned. Anyway, with that said, let's begin. Death and Honor begins by introducing us to Miyamoto Usagi's distant descendant named Miyamoto Usagi. Huh, I don't know what I expected. Unlike our Usagi, who is a traveling ronin, Space Usagi is in the service of Lord Hideaki of the Shirahoshi clan in a spacefaring society that still bases a lot of its social customs and architectural aesthetics on feudal Japan. As the Lord fears that some of their rival clans are up to no good, he plans to marry off his son Kiyoshi, to whom Usagi is assigned as a mentor, in a political marriage with the allied Mino clan's Princess Masayo, an idea that Kiyoshi himself is not terribly fond of. Unfortunately, Hideaki turns out to be right. One of his disgruntled generals, Matabe, has allied himself with the Kachitori clan and joins them in their intent to obliterate the Shirahoshi clan and steal their valued treasures, the location of which only Kiyoshi knows, as Hideaki commits suicide before they can torture it out of him. So that leaves it up to Usagi to take Prince Kiyoshi to the Mino clan in order to solidify the marriage and their alliance before the Kachitori can get a hold of him. All of that was just issue 1! Geez, Space Usagi storytelling has really picked up the pace.
Ludicrous speed! Go!
Of course, things don't work out that easily. After an intense firefight with the Kachitori clan soldiers, Usagi is forced to make a hyper jump and abandon his fuel tank, resulting in making a messy and quite frankly hilarious landing on the nearest planet, still with one fighter plane on their trail. Oh, wow! Oh my god! Look at this scene! Oh man, I need to get this framed and hanging on my freaking wall. This is glorious. It turns out there are other Crashlanders on this planet, and they just so happen to be none other than Princess Masayo and her entourage, who have also survived an attack from the war-hungry Kachitori clan. As the lot try to survive together and wait for a response to their distress signal though, Kiyoshi has some worries about his upcoming marriage. Usagi, can I talk to you? Of course, Kiyoshi. It's about Princess Masayo. I can't marry her. She's old enough to be my mother. Hush, Prince. Remember what your father said. This is a marriage of politics to seal the alliance between the Shirahoshi and Mino clans. The alliance is even more important now that the castle has fallen. I guess you're right. And besides, she's not that old. He's gonna try to shag her the instant Kiyoshi looks away, isn't he?
What the hell was that noise?
That was my Virgin alarm. It's programmed to go off before you do.
Soon enough, their distress signal is answered. By Matabe, of course, who makes his entrance in probably the cruelest way possible by simply throwing Kiyoshi's advisor's corpse out of the ship before landing himself. Jesus Christ. Matabe suggests that he and Usagi settle matters with a duel, as he was always jealous of Lord Hideaki favoring Usagi over him. However, the fight is a ruse, meant to distract everyone while Matabe's sidekick, a psychic servant, probes Kiyoshi's mind for the codes to the Shirahoshi treasure vaults. She attempts to run away with the codes and give them to Matabe's superior, Admiral Nero, but the timely arrival of the Mino backup results in their turtle-headed spaceship being obliterated before she can get that far, due to a ship crashing through their cockpit during the firefight. This comic has the weirdest hard-on for throwing spacecraft at giant reptiles, and I don't know what to make of that. With nothing left to lose, Matabe goes in for the kill, and after a brief and obligatory lightsaber battle, Usagi finally manages to win. But not before Matabe gives him the iconic Usagi forehead scar. Honestly, a nice detail. With the day saved, the marriage can finally be finalized, much to both Kiyoshi and Usagi's dismay. Kiyoshi due to the age difference, and Usagi due to his own feelings. But that's when Princess Masayo reveals a surprising truth. Turns out the real Princess Masayo was actually the young maid among the Mino survivors, and she simply took her name to protect her while on the planet. If you're not Masayo, who are you? I'm her bodyguard and tutor. And your name? Tomoe. So that was the first Space Usagi story. As to be expected from Stan Sakai, it is a great story, but I personally kind of feel like it's the weakest of the three. This might sound funny coming from me after I said I'm not that into space adventures, but the comic doesn't really feel space enough to me. Everything is still so firmly rooted in feudal Japanese customs that there's really very little about this story that couldn't have been told in the comic's normal setting, substituting space and laser rifles with long roads or bows and arrows. On the other hand, that does allow the series to sort of ease Usagi readers into the new setting rather than dropping them headfirst into something too far-fetched, so I do see the appeal. And Usagi's relationship with the younger Kiyoshi, which makes me think of the travels Usagi would later take with his actual son Jotaro in the main series, is really very sweet and one of the best parts of the story. So there's still plenty of cool stuff to be found here. Oh, and by the way, Princess Masayo, you know, the girl who's now the wife of one of our main characters, yeah, she's never even mentioned again. Instead, the second story, White Star Rising, begins with a lengthy explanation of the lifespan of a rare species of giant spacefaring turtle, whose corpses are used as the framework for clan warships, like the one that got destroyed in the last story. Now that might seem a little random, but it's actually very similar to a technique that Stan uses in the main series, where he'll dedicate a few pages to explaining an aspect of feudal Japanese society that is important to the story you're about to read, whether that be producing soy or smithing katana or farming seaweed. It's a good way to give you some appreciation for what you're about to see, and here it's very interesting to see him do it with his own lore instead of adapting a known historical period, and it really gives you an idea of how big a deal it was to see that starship destroyed in the last story. I really like it. Anyway, White Star Rising reveals that the Kachitori are still trying to get their hands on the treasure vault codes and have taken over the White Star castle that belonged to the Shirahoshi. On top of that, their side-tech, Lady Ryoko, managed to send the codes to her daughter Chiyoko in the form of a recurring dream that she cannot decipher before her powers awaken. Usagi and Tomoe, meanwhile, plan to infiltrate and destroy the clan from within before they can steal the codes, but to do so, they need help. Usagi decides to do so by recruiting a smuggler he once apprehended, who turns out to be Space Gen! Or, well, Rogan as he's called here. Despite being rescued from some bloodsport arena though, Rogan is not so easily convinced. It's impossible. There's nothing worth the risk. Just let me offer the next. We'll pay you well. When do we go? Rogan isn't the only new ally though. They're also joined by the scientist Dr. Takenoko and his invention, a robotic smart aleck Tokage named Spot. Another shout out to a pet Tokage Usagi had for a while in the main series. With the team assembled, they set off to sneak aboard the White Star Castle to destroy their computers before their decryption programs can figure out the treasure vault codes on their own. But just to keep things convoluted, the plan is soured when the shifty merchant they bought their ship from rats them out to Admiral Nero. From here, the story is an action-packed race against the clock that, naturally, leads up to yet another duel, this time between Usagi and Admiral Nero. Unfortunately, Usagi gets beamed on the head with a pipe and looks done for, forcing Tomoe to step in. And then, right as the reader is getting comfortable in this new setting, Sakai decides to teach them one very valuable lesson. Do not trust the source material. What? Holy crap! That's right! Even though Usagi cuts Nero down in rage, the story ends in tragedy as Tomoe dies in his arms. The White Star Castle is reclaimed, but at a terrible price. Just as the melting snow flows into the stream flows into the river, and the rivers flow into the sea, so too do our lives flow into one another. From the oceans to the clouds and back down into the peaks, so too is life's unending cycle. We'll meet again, Tomoe. I pray that next time, our karma will be more favorable. Farewell. Wow, okay, that is a bummer. But on the plus side, remember how I said the last story didn't feel weird and space-like enough? Yeah, screw that! This one goes completely ape! Sewer mutants, robot samurai, laser rifles everywhere, cyber ninjas, cybernetic prosthetic horns with inbuilt gadgets, evil clan overlords, alien gladiator arenas, computer hacking. This story has everything you could want in a spacefaring adventure, almost as if to apologize for earlier. It's awesome! I also really like this version of Gen. Instead of just being a bounty hunter who's more noble than he lets on, he's more like if Han Solo and Chewbacca crawled inside that fake rhino from Ace Ventura 2, and Jesus Christ, that is a horrifying image I just created there. I am so sorry. But now all the villains from the last two stories are dead, and the Kachitori isn't really much of a threat to the Shirahoshi anymore, so where can the story even go from here? Well, why don't we start the third story with some good old-fashioned crippling depression? In Warrior, Tomoe's death has left Usagi an emotional wreck, losing himself in constant combat training. He's pulled out of it long enough to witness the arrival of a mysterious character during a loyalty ceremony to Lord Kiyoshi. A character who turns out to be Usagi's mentor and Kiyoshi's uncle, Akira, who left the castle to become a wanderer years earlier. The happy reunion doesn't last long, however. Before leaving again, Akira convinces Kiyoshi to lead an expedition to reclaim the treasure the rival clans were chasing in the two earlier stories, as a show of his strength as the new clan lord. That same night, Usagi is attacked by a shape-shifting life form that takes the shape of Prince Kiyoshi. He manages to kill it with his katana, passed down from the original Usagi and adapted with the ability to momentarily surge like a lightsaber, while the real Kiyoshi is kidnapped by Rogan! Of course, a pissed off Usagi makes chase, following the signal from a chip implanted in Kiyoshi's head, which takes him to the planet Nausicaa, a random planet inhabited by giant insects, as well as a clan who lost to the Shirahoshi clan in a civil war years before. As such, they aren't exactly super keen on helping Usagi find the prince, at least not until he promises to put in a good word for them once he finds Kiyoshi. So with that, he's joined by a group of their soldiers led by the slingshot-wielding Koto. I really like Koto. She's badass. She's also introduced in issue 8 out of 9, so don't get too attached. Unfortunately, all but Koto and Usagi are killed on the way by mysteriously appearing Neko Ninja, and they even manage to run into Rogan, who Usagi shoots for his treachery with absolutely no hesitation. Only to be met by another Rogan, leading the Neko Ninja. Wait! And you know what? I gotta say, even if you see the following twist coming, it's still very well done. I'm disappointed in you, Usagi. I thought you would have figured it out by now. Well, student? Lord Akira? Your lord's uncle? But how? I call it a morph. I've only encountered two in my wanderings. They grew quite attached to me. they're telepathic, and this one morphed itself around me while I supplied Roken's voice. Okay, look, no Usagi reader was ever gonna believe that Gen was actually a traitor in this story, even if Tomoe managed to get herself killed in the last one, but let's not think too hard about that. And it's not impossible to guess that in a sci-fi setting there could be things like hologram and shapeshifters and stuff. But I gotta give this story some credit for the diversion it managed to pull by introducing another morph first. It establishes that creatures like this exist, but also kills it almost immediately. This both tricks you into thinking that the story won't pull the same rabbit out of its hat twice, no offense Usagi, but also ensures that this reveal doesn't come across as a total ass pull. It's really well done. Anyway, yes, turns out Akira is actually just an amoral asshole who wants all the Shirahoshi treasure and clan leadership for himself, and has tortured the treasure's location out of his own nephew. What a sack of crap! Kiyoshi's directions lead them to a seemingly empty underground vault, which turns out to have its walls lined with all the gold. Unfortunately for Akira, it's also rigged to collapse if as much as one brick is removed without the proper precautions, and soon all of his troops are buried in the sand. But Akira himself survives with the help from his morph. Now, I want you all to take a guess how this story ends. Just go right ahead and write your answers on your assigned tests, okay? Yes? Yes? Alright, everybody ready? Everybody write down their answer? Okay then, let's see what it is.
It's time to do.
You gotta admire that consistency. In fairness, this is a much bloodier and vicious battle than the other ones, and the gang nearly gets killed by the other morph when Usagi cuts off Akira's hand. But once again, some well-timed surge katana strikes save the day, and Kiyoshi will now be able to go home with the treasures and lead his clan. So, that's the third and last Space Usagi miniseries. It's a cool treasure hunting tale that expands the space setting more with this interesting bug planet and morphs and such, and there's tons of stuff to love. It feels a tiny bit disconnected from the storyline of the other two, as the Kachitori clan really has no bearing on anything anymore, and there's no real closure on Usagi dealing with the loss of Tomoe. But still, it's an exciting and pretty satisfying conclusion to finally see that treasure be back where it belongs. All in all, while I will definitely always prefer Usagi as being set in feudal Japan, Space Usagi is still a great series, and it's super cool to see Sakai use all his familiar techniques to communicate his own lore. So, Space Usagi is absolutely worth a read. It's just as high quality as the core series. But there's no Space Kitsune, 0 out of 10, worst spin-off, wouldn't read again. I'm joking, of course. But while that was Space Usagi's last miniseries, he still did have a couple other appearances. There were 2 Space Usagi shorts that appeared as backup stories in other issues in 1992. Under the Same Sky sees Usagi chase his father's killer, a badass looking ram character named Tsuno, and in Hair Today, Hair Tomorrow, Space Usagi meets his ancestor thanks to some fiddling with a time retrieval device. Neither story is particularly grand in scope, but they're great fun, and the latter in particular builds up to an awesome punchline I wouldn't dare spoil here. Space Usagi's last appearance in the comics came much later in 2014 in the Usagi Yojimbo series Senso, where it's revealed that he does eventually find a second love, in a rabbit named Mariko with whom he's expecting a child. Funny how that works. But let's save Senso for another time, because believe me, that story is a whole beast of its own. And finally, we can't forget about the Space Usagi cartoon that almost happened. Like I mentioned earlier, and even way back in my first Usagi video, the conception of Space Usagi happened around the same time that the cartoon series Bucky O'Hare and the Taupe Wars was on its way. And with 2 successful Usagi action figures already out, a 4-minute pilot for an animated series was created. And then Bucky O'Hare bombed. Hard. Not that the Space Usagi cartoon was going to be all that similar aside from starring a rabbit in a space setting, but that surface similarity was enough for licensors to back out of the project. And as such, the Space Usagi cartoon never happened. It's a shame too, because judging by the pilot, which you can easily watch on YouTube, there was potential for a pretty cool cartoon here. It even has some interesting looking new characters and features Lord Nero of the Kachitori clan as a recurring villain. Although I gotta say, this part right here kinda makes me giggle.
Space Usagi, I empower you and challenge you to lead us in our hour of need.
Ah yes, my beloved friend and tutor Space Usagi. Last name Usagi, first name Space. Let's just hope that supposed upcoming Usagi animated series from Gaumont Studios fares better. Despite the fact that we have heard barely any news about it since it was announced in early 2018. Really crossing my fingers on this one. Well, that's it for Space Usagi, so I think I'm just gonna lean back and watch a bit of TV. Oh, god damn it! Hi guys, and thanks for watching yet another Usagi video. I still have plenty of ideas for more of these, so stay tuned. Are there any cool space or future spin-offs that you like? Tell us about them in the comments, and don't forget to click the like button while you're down there. It really helps me out. Special thanks go to Silvermoon Ravenwolf, Warren Miller, and all my other patrons. I really appreciate it, folks. Thank you. And if you want to support me as well, my Patreon and Ko-fi links are in the description. And if you're new to the channel and like this video, don't forget to subscribe for more like it in the future. See you then!